Hi, we're the Chapter 9 group, and we're going to be talking about a little bit what we learned and some main points of the chapter. One of the really main points of this chapter was that deaf people don't really look at their disability as something of a disability. They more look at it as a culture change, which I found surprising. I never thought of something like that, and I found it really interesting that they view it as not really a disability, much like maybe like autism or being in a wheelchair, because they have their own form of language, and they're pretty much able to do whatever they want to do, and they're able to communicate pretty effectively, whether it be through their different forms of communication. And the real world has really adapted deafness and like text messages and other forms to make sure that deaf people are also allowed to live a normal life.
Hi. The main point that I really learned from this chapter that I have maybe some personal experience with is some of the technologies, especially the use of hearing aids. My grandfather actually uses a hearing aid, and for like a while he didn't like his insurance didn't pick it up or something like that, so he couldn't have one. And like sometimes communication did get hard. He wouldn't always hear what you were saying. You had to like speak really loudly, those sort of things. But now, like 2 years ago, he got one, and communicating with him is so much easier. And that's just due to old age. But I couldn't like imagine if I had to have like a hearing aid from the start. I'm sure that just leads to so much better communication, easier friendships, pretty much everything that we do on a daily basis just made easier because of these tools and technologies. So that's the main point that I really got from this chapter.
Okay, so I learned about the education system for deaf people. They use like different kinds of learning styles. One is auditory learning, where they just like talk at the deaf people, and they have to, learn English from that. Another way is speech reading, where like you read lips. A third way would be like finger spelling, that. And then the main one was American Sign Language, which is like most deaf people's like main way of communication. And when they do American Sign Language, it's considered bilingual. Yeah.
All right.
And I'm going to talk about the supports and technologies that supplement or replace sound for people who are deaf so that they can be in a place and normally communicate. And the first way is through sign language interpreters, which they can be hired to, and they're all trained and they learn how to translate everything that's being said, whether that's in church or a lecture or whatsoever. They translate it to sign language so the person that's deaf can hear it. And there's also speech-to-text translation, which you can also use in a college lecture, where there's a captionist that types very quickly what the lecturer would be saying, and it appears on the student's laptop. And it stays there for about 1 minute, so the student can have a while to interpret what the lecturer is saying rather than with the sign language interpreter whose hands would only be up a certain way for a minute. And there's also television and movie captioning where I think there's a federal law that says that every single television should be equipped with the ability to have captioning, and a lot of shows and movies will have that captioning ability so deaf people can hear it. And we also are able, with the advancement of technology through telephones and computer technology like iPads and iPhones, people who are deaf are able to easier communicate with people. And there's also alerting devices where sounds like doorbells or fire alarms are processed through flashing lights or vibrators so the deaf person can hear it, will know that it happened.
And although not having a specific chapter to outline about what we learned in the hearing and deafness spectrum, I did have a personal experience. I worked at Bob Evans for 4 years during my high school career, and every single Sunday a deaf group would come in and eat, and you had to be able to acclimate it at first. You didn't really know what to do on how to take care of the certain situation. And basically every single Sunday you kind of gained communication with them more and more, and it was kind of neat to see because they still had an overall joy for life, just being in the Bob Evans every single Sunday, just eating, and having their support group with them. So I think a lot of it is based on just having the supports with you, because they had a group of 10 or 15 people every single week, so it helped them gain a little bit of equality, and you saw that no one really judged them for being deaf or having hearing loss. They simply just acted as if it were nothing, and they approached it just like they were regular human beings. So I think that's a great thing that happened with the whole deafness and hearing loss, and I think we think of it as more and more acclimated to it than what it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So that's our video. Thanks a lot for watching, and enjoy the rest of the presentation.